3, 4. Let me take a look at what do you got? I'm moving to the speculation station a lot. Speculation station.
Hello everyone,
Hi.
and welcome to the Speculation Station podcast.
That's our podcast.
So today, as always, I'll be bringing in an object. I'm in charge this week, and I'll be giving it to this guy.
Will.
And Will will be coming up with a topic for us to talk about.
Yes, and then from that topic, we will move wherever we like, really.
Yeah, and we'll see where we go.
What's your name, by the way?
I'm Tom.
It is.
Indeed.
Yes.
Let's just do this. Let's dive in. Let's see how we go.
Right.
So, you ready for the object?
I am. A little sip of whiskey first.
Okay, calm down. So when you've supped your whiskey, I want you to close your eyes and present a single palm.
A single palm. Palm presented. Brain engaged.
I have a feeling you're going to guess what this is pretty fast.
Well, the game isn't to, make it unguessable, right? It is but a minor point of the podcast. Oh, it's tiny. Okay, so it's the size of a coin, feels like a coin. I presume it's a coin.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
Oh, it could also be a battery. No, it has some kind of engraving or bossing.
Could you
in the front.
now? I'm happy to reveal that it is indeed a coin, but don't look.
Okay, I'm not looking. I'm looking at you, not the coin.
Yeah. So, what coin do you think it is?
Oh, that's interesting. So, in order for it to be of interest to the podcast, it must be a historical coin or a commemorative coin of some kind. Your face is telling me that I'm not right on either of those. So a British coin?
No.
A foreign coin of interest?
Yes.
Okay. From Europe?
Yes.
From Western Europe?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. From France?
Could be.
Okay. So are you sure yourself where it's from?
Oh, 100%.
You know where it's from. Okay. Is it from the 20th century onwards?
100%. It's still used today.
Is it a euro coin?
Indeed.
Let's take a look.
It's
A single €1 coin.
a €1 coin.
Which is the €1 coin and the €2 coin are remarkably similar to the £1 and the £2 coin in
Precisely,
the UK, right? Is that by design or is it?
No, I think it's for security reasons, because the reason they make it with the silver and the gold is because it's harder to fake.
Yes,
when it's got those two construction methods.
Yeah, if anyone has never seen one before, perhaps American audiences, the €1 coin, I'll hold it up to the camera for those who are watching, but it has a kind of silver inner section, which is the majority of the coin, and a kind of gold-esque outer section, with a little picture of Europe. I seem to recall that the UK kind of positioned itself to be the centre of the Europe picture whenever featured on Euros or European Union stuff. Which is ironic.
Because we've never been in the Euro.
And we're now leaving the European Union. Okay, lovely. So, why a euro coin?
I thought it'd be amusing. I thought about bringing in a pound, and I was like, no.
What's better than a pound? A euro?
Well, yeah, and I thought there are many topics to talk about involving the euro and what it stands for.
It makes me think of my time in Europe.
Of course, yeah.
As you know, I lived in Europe. My wife and I lived in Amsterdam for 6 years, and then the south of France for a year. Not the south of France, where people say the south of France. What they really mean is the mid-south. We were in the actual geographic south of France.
You're almost in Spain, weren't you?
Essentially, yeah. And of course, so euros were our everyday currency, and most Western European countries have done away with euro cents, 1 and 2 cents. So if you go to the supermarket and your bill comes to €4.99 and you give them €5, you're not getting a cent back. They've done away with that.
That's weird.
Do you think that's sensible?
Well, if they're doing that, why don't they just round it up?
Well, they generally
round it down.
Sometimes you get up, sometimes it goes down, and you kind of get what you get, really.
Okay. Yeah.
I will say, however, going to the supermarket when we lived in Amsterdam, if you were dealing in cash and change, it was so nice to know it was a round number and not have to fiddle around with tiny little 1 cent and 2 cents in your coin purse. I didn't have a coin purse. Nothing wrong with a coin purse.
A coin purse, the term there. I mean, I just say purse for those. As soon as you say coin purse, it makes me think of those little pouches that you have in the Elizabethan era.
That is kind of what it is, yes.
That you attach to your belt.
Yes.
Next to your sword.
How many ducats is this worth, my good man?
Ducats.
Where was ducats from?
I certainly believe... don't actually know.
We have a very strange relationship with...
Isn't that? It's like Spanish money.
Well, but we had ducats in this country, I'm sure.
No, but I think there was a thing about... it's either ducats or is it where pieces of 8? But it's one of those areas.
Right, yeah.
Because it was an internationally recognised currency, everyone kind of used it. I'm not sure if it's actually ducats or if it's more towards the pieces of 8, but I got a feeling ducats and pieces of 8 might be of the same piece.
So maybe I think of it as being part of our currency because, as you say, it's just been around the world and used
nobles
internationally.
spoke of ducats in the medieval era. I think I believe, might be totally wrong, guys. So you tell us if I'm wrong, okay? We'll see.
We were lucky enough to grow up in a UK environment in which we had a very normal currency denomination system. Our parents grew up in an environment where you had shillings,
pound, shilling, pence,
crowns, half crowns, tuppence, and so on.
Sovereigns.
Yes,
well, sovereigns still exist.
Yeah, sovereign, crown, shilling were the kind of different denominations.
But a sovereign is still a thing.
Is it?
And guinea.
Oh.
Guinea's still a thing. You can still charge in guineas, but now it's like £1.20.
Okay.
A guinea.
I prefer the way we do it now. Much easier.
Oh yeah, it's much simpler. We don't need guineas. But the thing is, in the old days, you only used guineas because you were posh. Because it's worth like 20% more or whatever. Because I think it was it shillings? Because was it like 10 shillings in a pound or 20 shillings in a pound? And then there was one extra shilling to make a guinea.
Oh really?
That's how it worked.
You're asking the wrong person. It's an alien world to me, really.
I'm going to press you now.
Yes.
What's this week's topic then? What do you think we should talk about based on the
Europe as a overall society?
Okay. When you say Europe as an overall society, I'm intrigued. What do you mean by that? Do you mean
So two things. First of all, the more concrete idea of the European Union.
Gotcha.
Nice and simple. European Union is a collection of European countries that have banded together for their own economic, political, and social prosperity. The second way I'm looking at it is the more esoteric, abstract notion of Europe as a society and as a collection of countries which have a somewhat shared cultural identity.
That is kind of the source of Western culture, I guess, almost in its entirety.
I'd say what we describe as the West, absolutely.
At least, obviously, up until the advent of America.
Europe as a culture and as a society, he says through his whiskey-strained voice, as the society.
As a society.
Let's talk.
Let's talk like this. So I love that. I love that basic idea.
Yeah.
So I almost think we should do a look into the history of Europe a little bit. So just like where Europe's coming from. But I don't want to do it I think we should do it in a sort of in a kind of fun, interesting way. So perhaps to see what you think of this, we should do sort of a biopic. We should talk about like the history of a family through Europe.
A way of centering and focusing the history of Europe.
A made-up family. We're going to make it up.
Okay, I like that. Well, now you mention that, certain
maybe a royal family.
Well, now as I say, now you say it, certain royal names and famous names come to mind, like the Plantagenets.
Yes, of course.
And then what's the big one in Europe?
You mean you're talking about the Medicis?
Well, that was certainly a big one in Europe, but there's an even bigger one as well. Plantagenet actually may be what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, because all I can think of is Hanover now.
Teutons.
The Teutons, which is an area in what's now Germany generally.
Yes, Habsburgs. There's a lot of big families who have shaped Europe. Okay, so I like where you're going.
Yeah. So I think we should sort of talk about the life of royals. I'm
going to start writing some of these ideas down on a notepad. You said biopic, so it's a kind of biopic of let's say a major European family.
Yeah.
Right.
Wealthy European family of nobles.
Oh, I like that because
who are wanting to go up in the world and become kings of Hanover or kings.
And now you say it, really, European politics and political history is built on the backs of these so-called noble families, depending on how noble you might think they are.
Mostly involved killing each other.
Like you mentioned the Medicis, that was their thing.
Oh,
right?
they slaughtered each other.
Power through
Who were the other family who fought against the Medicis constantly? Do you remember their name?
Yes,
it's another really big name.
But I forget the name.
Yeah, like it's not the Bordellos, but I'm forgetting.
Let's call them the Bordellos.
Maybe that's the name of our family.
Okay, the Bordellos, which is a lovely term because it insinuates rich history, but also dirtiness.
Okay, so the dirty Bordello family, yes.
Are they Venetian?
Let's go with Venetian. I like Venetian.
Venice is like the UK, a state or a country which was tiny, coastal, and wielded power far beyond its imagined reach.
So let's talk about how this family came to prominence. How did they become nobles in the first place?
So, if we're talking about Venetian wealth, Venetian influence and power.
Right.
We're talking trade. We're talking seafaring, right?
Okay, yeah. You're getting me excited, making me think of Marco Polo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do a little bit of background on Venetian history and conquest. You'll find if you visit a lot of European cities, especially those around Mediterranean coast and the Dalmatian coast, a bit further eastwards, you'll find I think it could be a griffin or it could just be a lion simply. It's either a lion or a griffin. Will feature heavily on wall murals, monuments and stone carvings. And that is the Venetian presence around Europe. That's places they went to, where they conquered, where they had a major financial or military or political presence. So I'm thinking along those lines, trade, seafaring, conquest.
That's absolutely. I mean, Venice was like the network between the East and the West.
Was it?
I mean, that's why Marco Polo is Venetian, right? And he's not
Spanish or Portuguese,
English or Scottish. There's a good reason. It's because it's kind of it's right on that trade route. So you got the trades going to Africa. You got the trade. So there was a huge control of the trade routes in that area.
Okay.
So I like the idea of. So do you think so? They didn't start off nobles. They started off.
Well, nobody noble starts noble.
Yeah, that's it. Yes,
right. Of course, you always start from the dirt and the mud.
So yeah, how did they get into the? So how did because remember I guess in the cult of the Medicis in Venice and all these other Renaissance city states, people gained power. The trade sort of gained power and the nobles looked down on them. So maybe these people, these bordellos, were looked down upon by the nobles of the time before.
Yes.
But they were wealthy merchants. Who were they trading with?
Wealthy enough in their own right, trading with...
Because they'd be related to the Silk Road, because Venice was linked up with the Silk Road.
So let's
heavily.
say if the big uns, the nobles, the people in charge, are trading with the traditional allies, let's say.
Yeah.
Perhaps our bordellos are trading with what might be regarded as the enemy, politically or cultural enemies. And they're doing these little dealings behind the back to keep the trade flowing, but perhaps not in the manner to which people are accustomed.
So they're undermining the current power structure.
I love that. Yes. Okay. So their success comes from undermining, which I can't write very quickly.
It's a long, complicated word with too many ends.
Undermining, let's say, traditional power structures.
So there wasn't a king of Venice, was there? There was
the Doge.
The Doge of Venice. So maybe they're trying to take down the Doge. Which
is a constant theme of Venetian history. Let's get to the action.
Yeah.
Always.
So I want to think about a few people. There first, but I think the first thing is how do they assassinate the Doge? Right, that's what's happening, right? So how does this family assassinate the Doge and thenceforth gain power?
Okay, so you've got to lure the Doge out.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Yeah, lure the Doge. Yeah, that's great. So I want to think about so who does it in the family? Because do we have
a young up and coming fire starter of a boy?
So
or a girl.
we got the fire starter. So what's his name?
Lorenzo.
Okay, Lorenzo Bordello.
Lorenzo Bordello.
Plenty of cultural appropriation in this week's episode.
Of course. If any time that you talk about, enjoy, or otherwise immerse yourself in a culture, you're appropriating it, and that's bad, apparently.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the worst thing you can do.
One should never enjoy other cultures.
So, Lorenzo Bordello.
Lorenzo Bordello.
So I like that as the fire starter. I'm drawn to a mother figure here, who's like a serial poisoner, right?
A serial poisoner. Like the Lady Macbeth thing,
Exactly.
A woman who knows where power is.
And we've both read and not enjoyed I, Claudius, but the mother in that is like the grandmother, I think, actually.
The grand matriarch,
yeah, the grand matriarch in that is just killing and poisoning everybody throughout the whole...
Okay.
So I like the idea of a grand matriarch, yeah.
Let's call her Emelia Bordello.
Okay, yeah.
Let's write that down, Emelia Bordello. Should we call her the Grand Matriarch? Because that, Grand Matriarch implies a lot of control.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, grand. I will add in grand. Fantastic. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. So I want to come up with another sort of like older figure in this world. So I just want to, or a brother. I just feel like we need a brother or a sister.
I'd say perhaps an older mentor figure who helps to guide the family. And that person perhaps is a mix of European roots. Perhaps,
maybe he's a Frank.
Okay, I like that, yeah.
So it's a little bit different because the Franks also had big things going on with Venice. They were trying to control Venice.
Were they?
And a lot of the other cities. What were some of the other city-states? Just slip.
Florence.
Florence is the big one.
It is
that's the one I was
yes.
thinking of.
Firenze.
Florence.
No, Firenze.
Firenze. Is
Yeah,
that how
Firenze
they...
in Italian, I believe, and Florence in good old Anglo-English.
Good old-fashioned English.
Florence.
That's why we Brexited, by the way. Because we couldn't say names properly.
I like how you use it in the past tense as if we've achieved that. We haven't achieved Brexit at all.
Well, yeah, by the time this episode airs, we might have done.
By the time this episode airs, the whole world might be in incredible turmoil.
Yes, nuclear bombs might be dropped. We'll get to the nuclear bombs. Let's bring ourselves back to the Renaissance sort of era that we're in.
Yes, Renaissance-ish, yeah.
Yeah, ish.
Okay. Bearing in mind, as you say, this is a more of a biopic of Europe seen through a family.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yes, let's go beyond Venice. Yes.
So yeah, I want to. So how does this murder in Venice occur between? So yeah, let's come up with this. The name Giuseppe.
Yes.
Giuseppe is coming to mind.
Okay, write it down. I'm thinking of, because Venice was famous for its festivals and its general wantonness to have fun. So perhaps there's a big festival going on, and the Doge comes out to maybe give a speech of some kind or open the festivities officially, and that's where our Bordellos target him.
Yeah. So did they hire a private army? It was big in those days to sort of hire private killers to just slaughter a bunch of people. Yeah, because they just had loads of wars over the city just by hiring mercenaries. They just hired people from outside in Venice at the time. They didn't really have their own armies, a lot of people, and the citizens weren't generally used. They just hired people from outside the country, or people, just groups of mercenaries, and the mercenaries just went to whoever had the most money.
Let's bring it back to something closer to home for us then. We're British, so let's say they're English mercenaries who are carrying the warrant of the king at the time.
I'm going to make Giuseppe Verdi then. Verdi.
You like it?
Brings in English, let's say cavalry or something, or
no. Let's just say mercenaries for now.
English mercs, yeah.
English mercenaries, maybe with as I said, a kind of a what's the term for they've got permission from the royals to do something. What was that called back in the piracy days? A
privateer.
Privateer. So they're kind of like land-based privateers.
Well, yeah, that happened all the time. I'm not sure that the land-based privateer. If you guys know the correct term, please share that with us, because we don't know.
We don't know. But then that's what we're here
they're
for.
land-based privateers.
Yes, mercenaries then, as we said.
Which is exactly what a land-based privateer is.
So the English mercenaries.
Yeah, who perhaps have let's say, with a seal of the English crown, right?
Yes, or to make it more interesting, perhaps they don't have the full backing of the crown. Instead, it's barons from England who have a desire to extend their wealth, reach, and power.
Yeah, maybe even move over there themselves and set up those little tin pot baronies or whatever.
Exactly, because there's a lot of little states and land grabs going on, and obviously trade in that area is huge.
I'd say this is a big part of the history of Europe. It's just land grabs and family swappings, and it's basically trying to get control, whether it by war, whether it by marriage, whether it be by killing people.
And it doesn't matter if you have a monarchy whereby a king or a queen is in charge, or you have a political system whereby a prime minister or a premier is in charge. Whatever happens, you always have these very powerful groups like barons and MPs, ministers of parliament, who have their own desires, their own aims, and they will act out in whatever way they want.
So maybe these guys brought their wealth. So of course they're trading with the English a little bit, but maybe they also are bringing in wealth from the East, which is very fashionable at the time. So they got silks from China or
spices.
Yeah, spices. Yeah, of course. Yeah, because I think we'd be remiss if we avoided the Silk Road, and that is a lot of where the power of Europe comes from. Is for the fact they drew culture from along the Silk Road from places like China, Arabia. They drew stuff from Africa because it's kind of a mixing pot. And there's a great argument, anyone should read it, in Guns, Germs and Steel, where he talks about, and there are people who disagree with it, of course, which I think there's a good argument against it in I think it's something like Why Societies Fail or Why Civilization Fails. They argue a slightly different point, but the basic point is the physical position of Europe, rather than anything else, gave it its because it's very accessible but also defensible, and enabled different cultures to come in. Like you could get along the Silk Road, you could get places from Africa, you could trade with a variety of places, which has allowed it to get ahead of other places.
Well, in order to give us a good overall tone, mood, or brief for this, in your opinion, just whatever comes to your mind, what one word or one phrase sums up Europe for you? And that could be modern politically, traditionally, in the past, whatever. What is Europe to you in a word or a phrase?
That's interesting because there's lots of positive and negative about Europe.
Absolutely.
But what I would say is just I'm gonna simply pin it down to one simple word. It is for me that always grabs me about Europe, and it's very personal. It's culture.
That's what I was thinking. Something very similar. Culture, and for me, sharing.
Yeah.
Sharing is the word.
Melting pot. Yeah.
And that includes both positive and negative. We share our cultures, we share ideas. In a negative sense, we share our fears as well.
Yeah, and we kill each other. I mean, historically, only the 20th century where we stopped killing each other, mostly because we killed more of each other than we've ever killed before.
And we thought that'll do us for now.
So
we've saved up enough for the future.
So let's get back to the assassination day.
Oh yes,
so,
of the Doge.
Yeah,
yes.
I want to know. So on this assassination, so Doge is coming out giving his speech.
Yes.
So what is the setup for the murder? So how's the Grand Matriarch involved? How's Lorenzo Bordello involved? How's this outside figure who's bringing in the English mercenaries? How is that involved? How does it go down?
That's a good question. So, the Grand Matriarch, let's keep it relatively archetypal for the moment. A Grand Matriarch, in this case, someone who wants more advantages for her family and those who come after her. She's seeking to secure the legacy of the great Bordellos of Venice. Right. Okay. So Grand Matriarch, securing the legacy of the family for the future. Done. Simple enough archetypal motivation.
So what's her purpose on the day?
Maybe to woo and distract the Doge.
So she's been talking to the Doge already.
She's talking to him, she's with him, she's on stage with him.
Oh, also that sort of cements the Bordello alliance with the Doge. So after his death, they're seen as the obvious successor.
I like that, yes, because she's already has that powerful connection.
Yeah, so she's been building connections.
Now, Lorenzo Bordello, is that our supposed protagonist?
Yes, our fire starter. He's angry, right, and he wants prestige, he wants power, he wants...
Maybe, are there any possible, supposedly, good intentions here that he also wants to not just improve his family, but also improve Europe around him? Because if we're talking about a biopic of Europe...
Yeah, I totally agree. I like the idea that Lorenzo sees this as a chance to maybe because conquering is a big part of Europe. He wants to start at Venice and find a way to unite Europe, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so maybe...
He's super arrogant. He's a bit of a Julius Caesar, actually.
Let's do something relatively anachronistic and say that he is the first person to envisage a united Europe.
Okay,
right?
yeah, that's
so the proto-European Union. That's
so
what it's got
kind
in
of
mind.
like the League of Nations was the proto to the UN.
Exactly, yes. And there's a selfishness because you're saying if I create this, I will be remembered in history as the man who united Europe. But at the same time, there's also this esoteric political idea of how can we improve lives for people around us.
So instead of the European Union, he wants to create the European Empire.
I like it, yes, the European Empire.
Yeah, with Venice as its capital.
Venice as the centre, yes, and trade as its engine.
Yeah.
Okay, write that down. I'm glad you're writing it down. You're in charge.
Just so I remember. Right, okay, so I love the European Empire sort of angle. Okay, so that's his dream, and he's really aggressive about it, and he's a showboater, I feel like he's the kind of guy who dresses very fashionably, probably, shows some skin, shows
some skin, all right.
Maybe a nipple, I'm not sure.
Probably not a nipple in,
Well, you'd be
Renaissance
surprised. So,
maybe he does. He's a total,
I think I like seeing this guy as a little bit sexy, a little bit forthright,
forward thinking, counterculture.
Super counterculture, but also thinks he should, be in charge of everything. He's super arrogant.
Yeah.
Probably sexually deviant in a large way. So what kind of sexual deviance would you say he had?
Okay, something that in our modern world would actually be regarded as very vanilla, but in their world is like, whoa, what are you up to, buddy? So he likes, well, let's just say he's simply bisexual.
Yeah.
So for them, for Renaissance Venice, that would probably be relatively acceptable.
Weirdly, bisexual to some extent, it wasn't acceptable outwardly, but inwardly it was, that kind of thing was done.
Yeah.
But even blowjobs, I think, were super, super rude. I know in medieval times, it was considered super racy to have anything like that. So, even though that's very vanilla in today's
So
sex
maybe,
work,
so let's build on that idea. So not only does he want a unified Europe, a kind of European empire, as you said, that is politically and culturally aligned, but also that is progressive in its sex, in its violence, its drinking, its ribaldry.
I want to live here.
You want to live in Lorenzo Bordello's vision of Europe?
Kind of, I do already.
So they're aligning themselves with English mercenaries. So obviously there's that connection to England. What other European countries might they align themselves?
Well, I think the immediate, because obviously England's very far away.
Yes.
I think the obvious one, because of the shared culture and the shared Latin culture, is probably France.
Yes, that's right.
And in that time, I believe the Holy Roman Empire might have been centred or bouncing between Germany and France, because there was, I think, where I'm not, correct my history if I'm wrong, which I probably am.
Yeah.
But there was like Frederick or one of the other sort of Holy Roman Emperors, because that they were bartering around. Getting that title was a huge deal at the time. So probably a connection with Rome is really important, and getting an endorsement from Rome at the time.
Vestiges of Rome. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was really like sordid at this time. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, Rome has always been sordid, but that's what makes it so beautiful.
It is. Oh, they're sordid bastards.
I love that. So yeah, let's get back to the murder day. So he's this sort of fire starter, bisexual, fucking everything sort of guy. He's roving around trying to, and so where is he on the day?
I think he is, let's say in the modern parlance, chilling with some mates, right? Watching the festivities. They're close enough to the stage or the dais of where the doge is situated to be VIPs, but far enough away not to be, potentially.
Are they going to involve themselves in the murders?
No, so they leave this. And I was going to ask you this. So if we're leaving this up to mercenaries, do we want a very public, bold-faced murder where you just literally have to go up to this guy and they murder him, you say, yep, killed him? Or is it the underhand, the doge has died? Oh, what a surprise. What's happened here?
Because, I don't know, I'm drawn towards the bold-faced, let's just kill them all.
He's dead. Kill the doge.
We're in charge now. This is the new vision.
It's almost like cauterizing a wound. The wound is made, the cauterization happens and you move on. So you kill the doge very publicly and very boldly and you say, look, he's gone, we're now moving into a new era.
I think you'd kill the doge and kill all his advisors, slit their throats on stage in front of all the other nobles.
Oh, everyone?
Just kill them all.
Okay, so all the
that's what I'm drawn to. Just slaughter the old guard.
And also, now you mention it, if we're talking about a biopic of Europe as a personified ideal, that is a large part of our history. From the Ides of March with Caesar,
just gonna say that,
the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, the whole of Europe is built on this death, subterfuge, murder, assassination.
Yeah, and so much of that comes from particularly the Italian peninsula.
Yep.
And Venice is a big part of that. And of course, Roman culture was all about this sort of, I'm your client, you're my client, and if you're my client, you'll murder this person for me so I can gain power, thus you gain power and we share power together. So it's this weird idea of making alliances, making deals, but with this horrible sordid side, that in order to make those deals, you had to do brutal things and cut out other people, destroy other people.
And it was seen as part and parcel of the whole thing.
Glorious.
Of the course. Yes.
Absolutely glorious.
So we're really getting into the nitty-gritty of the glorious, bloody history of our esteemed Europe,
I think we have to, because I think Europe is perhaps one of the most bloody places. I mean, not everywhere else has its fair share of blood. I don't want to take that away from anywhere else, like, China, Russia, the Incan Empire. Those places were equally bloody, and we don't want to insult you by saying you're not bloody.
No.
Wherever you're from.
Speaking of Russia, let's inject a bit of modern Putinism into Lorenzo Bordello and his
Lorenzo
family.
Bordello.
Right. So let's say the doge is killed by English mercenaries. They simply walk up to him, all his closest advisors, and as you say, slit throats,
butcher them,
stab, whatever, and they're dead. So now, in a Putinesque way, Lorenzo Bordello walks up to the platform, the stage, and he says, this is a terrible thing that's happened. And in the Putin way, you're really saying, I've done this. You know I've done this. I'm not going to say I've done this.
I love it, yeah.
So we'll all just pretend it's not happened in the way we know it's happened and move on with our lives.
And he sort of implies that, if anyone else fucks with me, I'm going to slit your throat too.
That's the greatest thing about Putin. His ability to let you know that if you fuck around, I'll fuck you, buddy.
Yeah, and that's to slightly digress, just that's why he has so much power over the West, particularly at the moment, and civilized countries, because Everyone knows he's a tin pot dictator. Everyone knows he's doing it, but he will just kill anyone who goes against him.
Yes.
It's just...
He'll also happily admit that, yes, I am that person. And then when you say, "Are you really?" he goes, "No." But yes, no.
But again, I think it's, and I guess China has this same advantage as well. It's just that the advantage of basically being in charge for life. They have a certain set of things they don't have to worry about in the same way as a democratically elected leader.
Yeah.
They can think long term in a way that democratic leaders can't.
So, speaking of which, then, something that someone like Putin and especially Donald Trump have relied upon traditionally in history, Hitler obviously is a great example as well, is to encapsulate, or at least supposedly encapsulate, the problems of their culture and society and say, this is what's wrong with us. If we do X, Y, and Z, especially if X, Y, and Z involves getting rid of a certain type of person, our society will be all the richer for it. So Trump does this with immigrants. Hitler did it with Jews.
Whoa,
Everyone does this.
Interestingly, and both sides of the Euro and Brexit debate used that same idea of of you'll be richer, you'll be healthier if you do this, if you don't do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So regardless of its sincerity or not, maybe that's what the Bordello family are saying.
Okay, yeah.
So what is the problem? What have they identified as a problem afflicting Europe and
perhaps too
Venice?
inward-looking and perhaps only focused on trade. Maybe that's the issue. They're only focused on trade because that's what Venice was at the time. It was focused on trade. It was wealthy, but he's like, no, we need to build a real empire. An empire where, the government and everything is spread, not just a financial empire like the modern American empire, like the modern Chinese empire, like the Venetian empire, like Venusian.
Yeah, from Venus, right?
Like the Dutch empire was very much a financial empire more than it was a...
Like the Dutch tulip implosion of their currency. Yes. So what you're saying is that the Bordellos have identified a need to diversify their portfolio
to
of
basically be a
Europeans.
hard power.
Hard power. Yeah. Okay. I like that. So we can murder the Doge.
Yeah.
Implant the Bordellos as people who say, look, the Doge is gone. That's happened. We can't bring him back. We know what's right for Venice.
Yeah.
And we know what's right for Europe. Trust in us.
So I think the first thing, they need to appoint a pope.
A pope?
They need to get a pope in, yeah, because that's going to give them the sway. That's going to give them a lot of sway because then they can start marrying the leader of Florence or something and absorb that into the empire. Then they can start attacking.
Okay, so let's say the classic British tradition. I don't know if any other countries have ever done this, but the English tradition has always been, as well, for the landed gentry, the upper classes, that if you have two sons, the firstborn son, the elder son, goes into the military or does something worthwhile. The second-born son generally goes into the clergy and serves God. So, let's say Lorenzo Bordello is the firstborn son in the Bordello family, and he's going to be the Doge. He's going to basically try and run this whole power thing from Venice through Europe. He has a kind of dumber younger brother. Let's call him Alfonso. These are all classic names.
Alfonso Bordello.
Alfonso Bordello. He's the younger, supposedly dumber brother who's given the task of being the Pope. He goes the top of the clergy.
So he becomes Pope. Yeah, I like that.
But let's say also that Alfonso Bordello is not as dumb as he seems, but we'll come back to him later. But he's not as dumb as he seems.
I'm almost going to say let's say he's really organised.
Yes.
Okay, he's what do you call it? Kind of left side, right side brain, whatever the right one is.
I think it's also very telling for the history of Europe that when one person has power and they appoint another person to be a puppet, that puppet will often actually be more independent than they suspect.
Yes, and I believe, by the way, that it was a common thing across Europe to do the whole send the less important son into the clergy or
Absolutely,
the less.
yes.
I think that was common across Europe.
Okay. Are we saying though, really, it's Emelia Bordello who's really controlling everything?
I'm saying she is. I imagine she's like the director because she wants the future of her family to be good.
Yes.
She sees a lot of. She places a lot of stock in him, but is worried about his self-control, his sexual deviance at the time, because obviously being bisexual is going to be scandalous with many people.
For a political figure.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's worried about that.
To be honest, he probably had sex with his brother.
So a really
let's make it
horrible,
incestuous.
dirty,
Yeah, fuck
incestuous
it. Why not?
Kind of. Well, this is what Game of Thrones is based on.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones is based on this sordid, bloody, incestuous European history.
So that's maybe why these two kind of trust each other. Alfonso and
Lorenzo.
Lorenzo.
Yes.
They trust each other because
They've been as close as people could
yeah,
be.
they've jerked each other off under the covers a few times.
Okay, lovely. We're keeping it as real and as dirty as possible.
Please.
European history is filthy.
Filthy.
Filthy as fuck, son.
Yeah, and any pretense to the contrary is a fucking lie.
I think probably every major culture's history is based
100%.
on nonsense,
And
dirtiness, and filth.
There's so much dirtiness and filth, but also this veneer of pretending it's not true.
And I would say, actually, now we're talking about it, as Europe as a society, the Europeans are probably better at that than any other culture on earth, pretending that we're high society, nobility, royalty, but actually we're filthy. Like the Victorians, I think no other period and social structure has ever been as hypocritical and opposing as the Victorians. They presented this veneer,
they were the worst,
the surface
for
of we're the most calm, collected and socially upright people in history. Really, they were one of the filthiest sects of people in history.
Okay.
Totally filthy.
So, filthiness notwithstanding,
Yes.
let's move on to the next section of how they...
Okay, what happens next?
So they've got control of Venice, they've got control of the papacy.
And
Is that the
therefore
right way,
trade,
papacy?
I think papacy is fine. Yes.
I think that's right, yeah.
And either way, we're the speculation station. We're not the we know everything station.
We're the
right?
we bullshit it as much as possible station.
That's us. So they have the papacy, they have Venice, they have essentially European to eastward trade,
Yes.
but they want to move beyond that. How do they start to move beyond Venice into the power structures of Europe?
That's, I think, so are we going to start... My question is, we got a few angles. Maybe they do some marriages, maybe Emelia. They start with some marriages to gain some early power.
Okay, who do we marry whom to whom? Obviously, Alfonso can't marry, he's the Pope. Lorenzo could marry.
I think he should.
Okay,
This
so
is
Lorenzo,
the big symbol. Is it with somewhere like Florence, that's another big, powerful, nearby power?
I think somewhere outside of the Italian group.
So perhaps maybe a French city in the south?
French or German, yeah.
Can you think... Strasbourg is too far north.
Yes.
I think something a little bit... somewhere south of France or...
Lyon?
Lyon, I like Lyon. Okay. So...
The Duchess of Lyon.
Marries...
A countess, that's more French. Comtesse.
The Countess of Lyon.
Comtesse de Lyon.
De Lyon. We'll say it like that. Yeah, I like
Okay.
that. Apologies for my spelling, but it doesn't matter because
No one
nobody's
can see
reading
it.
this. Right.
Let me check it. Okay, that's the name Leon rather than
That's what I
the
thought.
place
Yeah.
Leon. Leon is
It's with a Y. Yeah,
you
of course.
L-Y-O-N,
So the Countess de Lyon.
Comtesse de Lyon.
So how do they get on? Do they get on? What's their relationship like?
I reckon, and this is very indicative of European history. So I've dropped my pen. So she and he don't have any personal, romantic, or sexual connection, as is often the case with arranged marriage.
Yeah.
However,
No sex.
she is very self-aware, so she knows what the arrangement is.
Yeah.
She knows what they're both getting out of
She's
it,
happy
and she
with that.
knows what the implications
So she has
are.
her own men or boys.
Yes, I like, and because he's bi, he goes with his men and boys. She goes with her men and boys. Whatever.
So
she
who's
wants.
she sleeping with? Who's her bit on the side?
Ooh, okay, interesting.
Is it a servant or is it?
Okay, let's branch out into Europe more. So we've got Venice with the Bordellos. We've got England with the mercenaries and the barons. We've got France with the Comtesse. Where else can we go?
I love
Who's
the idea
she
of her
fucking?
like loving like a sort of big sort of like Germanic or
Dutch.
soldier, like
'cause
like
the
a general or something.
Yeah, the Dutch command
She's-
of mercenary outfits
so she's
is unparalleled.
fucking
She's fucking the
a
Dutch.
Dutch general.
Who also is he makes his money on tulip exchanges. Because like we talked about before, the Dutch based their economy for
Yes.
a time on tulips.
Yes,
You've heard about this before, right?
yes, I've heard of it. I have no expertise or knowledge about
For
it.
our audience, I cannot remember the period of history. Somewhere between the 14th and 16th centuries, perhaps. Let's just say for a rough estimate. Obviously, the Dutch are famous for their tulips anyway. And if you're ever in the Netherlands, especially around Amsterdam,
I believe it's pronounced Dutchland.
God, it is the Dutchland. If you're ever there, go to Keukenhof or Kukenhof. I cannot remember its real pronunciation. It's a whole town devoted to growing and selling tulips. They have an amazing tulip museum there. It's fantastic. However, for a time, tulips were so important to them that their currency was not based on the gold standard, but on the tulip standard. And tulip bulbs were that standard, that currency. And a single tulip bulb could, buy a house or a whole village, perhaps, let's say. It got to that kind of crazy state. Eventually, like any economic bubble, it burst. Off it goes. And their whole currency collapsed.
Boom and bust.
Yeah, boom and bust and tulip bulbs. Bulb and bust. So, let's say a high-ranking Dutch kind of military leader, noble, tulip trading dude, right? Where are we going after that? So she's sleeping with him.
Yeah.
Lorenzo's sleeping with whoever the hell he was.
Yeah, but so he's got a marriage. So they've got to unite with at least some of the south of France, with Lyon.
Okay, so right now we're uniting England with the barons, who they're mercenaries, France with the Comtesse, the Dutch with this guy she's fucking. Let's name him now, and I'm going to insist that the middle of his name is Van der. So something Van der something.
Oh yeah, okay. Let's say, is there a Dutch version of Albert or?
Ooh, foreign versions of names. The only one I can think of for my friend who's Dutch is Jeroen, which I believe is like Jerome. So it's Jeroen.
Yeah.
Jeroen.
Jeroen.
Van der. Okay.
Van der Blaskelgun or something.
Sure, why not? Blaskelgun. Jeroen van der Blaskelgun. Okay.
Cultural appropriation times 12.
Engage. Next episode, we'll both wear dreads.
Yeah.
Okay. So, where else in Europe? What are the other European powers? It's Spain and Portugal, really, isn't it? That we really need to bring into this flagration of nonsense.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
So I mean, I think we're going to have to push to the point where we're going to have to back this up with the sword, with weaponry.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
With stuff that actually kills people. They've got to show that they mean business.
Yeah.
So how are they going to do that first? Obviously, they've got the church behind them, which is a big deal. So that gives them a lot of legitimacy with a lot of people, so they can be whispering in the courts. Of course, Emelia and Alfonso, the Pope, can be whispering in the courts across Europe to try and get the message across and get allies.
Since we're discussing a history of Europe, such a major part of that is basically fucking over places that are outside of Europe. Somewhere nearby, like Africa, North Africa, the French and the Spanish have a long history there. Certainly the French do, and beyond that.
There was a time in Spain there was a whole. I wish I could remember the name of the empire, but there's a whole Islamic empire that ruled Spain for many years. Maybe even during this period. I wish I could remember what it's called because it's a very easy name to remember. But
well, the Moors were certainly there. When we visited Portugal, we've been to these 1,000-year-old Moorish forts and castles, and these people that have insinuated themselves into Europe, which is only fair because we insinuated ourselves into their cultures. They come over and insinuated themselves into ours. So let's say, since we're talking about a basis of trade, first of all, Europe and these European powers are starting to spread themselves further afield along these trade routes. Okay? So, and we don't have to go east, we can also go west. Remember, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Dutch and ourselves were going over to the Americas, right?
At this time, it was a big deal, yeah.
So to bring Spain and Portugal into this, I think we need to consider the Americas as well and their impact.
It's very burgeoning at this point.
It absolutely is. So how does that bring us back to the Bordellos and what they want to do? So they have...
Well, because they want to pump as much wealth into Europe as possible, so they're probably bringing in lots of wealth and maybe soldiers, slaves from outside.
Slaves, I'm glad you said that because that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, from outside in order to... I imagine they're buying up lots of people because let's assume these guys are stupid wealthy. They made a killing in the east. They made a killing in maybe in like Namibia or Libya or one of those places as
North
well.
Africa, yeah.
Yeah, so just what was the not quite Mogadishu, but Morocco.
Morocco, yes.
Morocco's good,
which
another
is
good
such
location.
a multicultural place.
Yeah.
Okay. Where are we up to?
So how are they? So where are they going to? I'm trying to go. How are they going to build their army then?
Okay, so let's restate where we're at. The Bordellos have seized control of Venice, and therefore most or many of the major European
and the Vatican.
The Vatican as well. So they control the social, religious, political structures of that region of Europe.
Yeah.
but they want to extend their reach to unite and strengthen Europe as a whole.
They've got tendrils spreading throughout the rest of Europe in terms of their familial
so what
collections.
We need to do is bring us back to the human level. And the thing I'm thinking of is, let's say Lorenzo and his arranged marriage with the Comtesse de Lyon.
Yeah.
Right? They are both intelligent for their time, modern people, right? And they know what arrangement they're in, they know what their marriage is. So actually they're quite savvy people.
They're political movers and shakers.
Yes, so Lorenzo is going to send the Comtesse off to somewhere for her to essentially have relations with someone to build a connection. Okay. Where do we need to build a great connection?
Maybe somewhere historic.
Yeah, well, yes, absolutely.
I was thinking maybe Greece or...
Oh, I see what when you say historic, you mean really...
I mean, she's going to read philosophy and, meet those people and sort of get that sort of sense of education behind her.
Greece and or Turkey then, because they have such a major influence over the power structures.
Don't mind Turkey as well.
Structures.
So let's go with Turkey. I like what you're going.
Because it's interesting. It's a bit different.
Yeah,
from Greece,
So that's really nice. And so she's reading. She's going for a Turkish education, and is obviously maybe going with the. I think this was pre-Ottoman, wasn't it?
Essentially, but those kind of people and powers are starting to emerge.
It might be the Ottomans at this point, but there was some kind of. I'm not sure what the leaders were called at this time.
No, nor I.
It's on the tip of my tongue, but...
So let's say the Comtesse is sent to be educated in Turkey.
Comtesse?
Well, that's like the European version of Countess.
Comtesse. You have to put on a French accent to do that.
Of course you do. She's the Comtesse de Lyon.
Just remove all these syllables and then you've got French.
And make sure that you don't hit the consonants at the end of words. So Lyon. No. But her secret mission...
Apologies to all of France, my French accent.
No,
embarrassing.
We will never apologise. This is why we are leaving Europe. Well, just quickly, since we're talking about Europe, right? The Anglo-French relationship is odd and storied and ever-changing. But since, very fractured and frictioned, you and I are both English teachers. We teach English to Japanese people currently. Now, as part of teaching English, you very often have to teach French because French is a huge part of English and vice versa. Our language in this. The reason for this, as I always tell my students, is that we just have this very incestuous, although I wouldn't say incestuous to my Japanese students, incestuous relationship with France.
Yes.
We have ruled them for a time. They have ruled us for a time. Their culture was ours, our culture was theirs. Their language was ours, our language was theirs for a while.
And still to this day, French in English particularly, and I think this is spread across to the Americas as well, is considered just sophisticated because the nobles of England spoke it. It was the way you spoke in Europe, was you spoke French.
Yeah,
the language of nobility.
The language of nobility and courtiers and the court itself.
So perhaps... I'm imagining there's a lot of French speaking going on in our story here.
French and Italian and Latin. Still Latin speaking.
I imagine
as
so,
well.
yeah. Well, especially if they're related to the Vatican, which they must.
Speaking of, just quickly on a fun little tangent that I've decided upon, I rewatched the other day one of my favourite movies, The 13th Warrior.
Yes, fantastic
Antonio
fun.
Banderas. He's an Arab who joins a Viking hit squad to go and take out these guys over in Northland. But in order to communicate with them through Omar Sharif. Omar Sharif uses Latin to talk to the Vikings, and it really shows you how far spread Latin was and how well travelled the Vikings were. So the Vikings really spread themselves across almost the entire world. And again, that's the history of Europe. It's spreading everywhere.
I mean, on that Viking note, and this is tangent-esque on a huge level, when you actually look at a proper map, like a globe, is better than a world map or than something else like that. When you actually draw a line between the top of Norway or Denmark and like Iceland and then Greenland and then the Americas, it's like 2 foot.
Yeah.
If you go across the Arctic Sea, it's almost no distance at all to the Americas, which is amazing when we think about how it's not surprising that the Vikings were the first to settle. Of the Europeans to settle in those areas.
Our spatial relationship with where America is generally based on the 20th and 21st century methods of transportation, primarily being boats first of all, and then planes. And that route is, as you say, just across the ocean. So it feels far away, but actually For the Vikings, it was Iceland, Greenland,
And
Nova Scotia, and you're there.
and Newfoundland. You know?
Yeah, which is Nova Scotia, if I'm correct in saying yes.
Right, yeah,
Nova
because
Scotia,
that's where the Viking settlements were found, isn't it?
Yeah, as we now know, way before the Europeans got there, and this is what you and I were taught in school, was that Christopher Columbus and Amerigo Vespucci discovered America, and they goddamn didn't. The Vikings did, and even before them, maybe other people did.
Well, of course they did. The I think it was the either Micronesian or Polynesian. Yeah, there's a whole different load of sets. I wish I could remember. But that expanse there, I mean, it happened a lot later than people settled Europe, but they were perhaps a few thousand years there. So I think the Vikings might have been there when it was much less populated. So, but I don't know.
The Polynesians, I think, a culture and a group of people you and I have a lot of respect for.
So amazing.
A lot of that comes from something we've mentioned before, which is the series of games from the Civilization franchise.
Yes.
The Polynesians can just cross seas like it's nobody's business, because that's what they did. And I remember watching a documentary about Hawaii a few years ago, and the Polynesians, I can't remember where their origin was, but they essentially spent many generations and many centuries finding Hawaii. They knew something was out there, and they'd follow seabirds until they could no longer follow them, and then they'd go back home. And the next generation would go out to where the previous generation had gone and finished, and then follow the seabirds a bit further. And I think there's about 400 years of doing this. Go out, follow the birds, come back, go out, follow them a bit further, come back, and they found Hawaii. And apparently they were doing this in tiny coracles, tiny boats. It's beyond impressive.
Well, what I've from similar reading that I've done in the same area, the Polynesians, what was kind of incredible about them is the initial thought from most historians and most archaeologists was like, they just drifted across by accident and then got there. But it seems more like that it was a very planned expansion to all those different little islands, and there are thousands of little islands, some of which have still got very small populations.
Yeah.
There is in fact a really creepy one that involved lots of sexual abuse from there was a English part of the British Empire where they were super separate from the empire, about 20 people living on this island, and they had children and
I mean, it's kind of inevitable.
Yeah, there was a lot of dodgy stuff. It still exists as a place. I wish I could remember what it was called, but yeah, it's a really small. But anyway, all those tiny little like fractured islands, it looks like that the Polynesian expansion was very planned. They were like, it wasn't like, oh, we accidentally drifted over here, let's have sex and make babies. It didn't work at all like that. It was more the sense of, let's expand. We know there's something here. Like you were saying with the seabirds,
They know
something's there. Maybe one of their explorers or pioneers noticed something and came back and said, hey, let's send a troop out there to live. Maybe sometimes they got stranded. Yeah. Maybe they did, but
maybe some people never returned home. But if you do it over generations, it evens out. And those people, I'm sure that on the one hand, they use their conscious skills to say, look at the seabirds, feel the currents, smell the wind, what's coming, and say that we know someone's over there. And on the other hand, a subconscious built-in knowledge from their generations and generations of doing that and having that skill, just saying, I just know there's something out there. I know there's something out there. Europeans, coming back to our topic, have done it in a slightly different way of just going and seeing what happens. Like, I remember you lent me a while ago the excellent book Nathaniel's Nutmeg, which, like Guns, Germs and Steel, we would both wholeheartedly recommend. It's a historical account of the discoveries and exploitations of trade routes out to the east, and trying to find a northern passage through the Arctic Circle, which was essentially a death sentence for anyone who tried it.
Yeah, it didn't work out well for anybody. No.
So our object of the day is the euro coin. And I really want to kind of bring currency and coinage into this as well.
Yeah, I want to. So do you think, actually, as the Medicis, not the Medicis, the Bordellos,
who are our Medici, kind of analogues.
Analog is the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Perhaps they want to sort of bring in a coin early, like the European sovereign or whatever.
A single European currency.
Yeah. So they want to bring in news. Maybe it's the current, the Venetian currency of the time. Maybe.
Which was florins, I believe.
Doesn't that come from Florence?
Well, maybe. I'm
pretty sure Florence come from Florence.
Well, florins, yes. So it probably does, yeah. I will readily admit that a lot of my knowledge of this time and the period and the people and the culture comes from video games.
Oh, of course you've played Assassin's Creed.
There it is. That's what it's done it for me. Really, I've learned a lot from that. And they do, credit to them, they have a lot of emphasis on giving you true historical information. And I seem to recall in the Assassin's Creed 3.
You're not going to look at me. It's not going to help. I've not played Assassin's Creed.
The coin is florins for sure. Yes. So, do the Bordellos have a design to create a single European currency? And maybe
I like that idea.
Maybe they want to create the Bordello. So it's a coin with their faces on.
Oh yes, with the Bordello.
Yeah, write it down.
The Bordello coin.
So the Grand Matriarch, she's the highest denomination. She's the most expensive coin.
Okay,
Lorenzo is the second most expensive, then Alfonso, and then maybe some peripheral cousins.
Yeah, there's going to be hundreds of them, all incestuous, naturally.
Yes.
So as they expand, so maybe they're warring through Europe gradually at this time. You know, so they've taken probably a decent chunk of Italy, the south of France, have probably folded fairly easily. And then maybe they're at war in Germany, because Germany classically is one of the hardest places to fight in Europe for some reason. I think it's just because the fractures only in the... What's always interesting I find about Germany is about as old as the United States.
Yeah.
Maybe not
in terms... modern country,
not in terms of the culture, but in terms of the fact it being a single nation of united people. That just didn't exist until a similar time to the United States.
What fascinates me about Germany, really, in terms of Europe and European cultures, is that if you take a look at Italy, France, Spain, to a degree Portugal as well, these countries have what we would consider to be the laid-back, romantic, kind of fiery passion of Europe. And Germany is very separate from those countries. Linguistically, culturally, ethnically, they've always been very different, and they still to this day are very different.
It's the divide between... It's almost the divide is there between the Romance languages and the Germanic languages. It's almost...
Germany is that bridge between the western southern part of Europe and the northern Scandic part of Europe.
And weirdly, Britain is a weird mix of the two, because Britain was originally a Scandic nation. It really was. Like, the whole of Britain was a Scandic, and the Anglo-Saxons, who were the Germans that came over, effectively, they kind of changed it, because before then it was effectively a bunch of Scandic people. The Celts were very Scandic. And then the Anglo-Saxons came over, and then, of course, William the Conqueror brought French culture. That's the story we tell anyway. But
my ancestor, William the Conqueror.
Of course.
He's like the European Genghis Khan, you know. He spread his seeds so far and wide that thousands, millions of people can trace themselves back to him.
Yeah. You look like you're related to William the Conqueror.
I do have a kind of Franco look. There are two things I want to get into right now.
Yeah.
First of all, who opposes this? Where's the conflict? Who is opposing this family and their spread and the European unification?
So let's say the Holy Roman Emperor. Because that's different to the Pope.
It is, yeah.
And it's a rival. Let's say it's in Germany for now. So it's like,
which is where it was for a time.
Let's say Frederick the X.
Yeah, Frederick the... Let's just say Frederick.
Let's just say Frederick the... whatever.
The Frederick the whomeveth.
The whomever.
Frederick the Nth.
The Nth, yes. I like Frederick the Nth. So Frederick the Nth is against... So I imagine him as a kind of... maybe not a big burly guy, because I think that's the obvious image of it.
Yeah.
But I like him having sort of, the red beard and the sort of the slightly Celtic Gaulish look to him.
What are his power structures and connections? Who is he allied with?
I imagine for a start, it's military. Big military guy.
Germany.
Certainly sort of the Teutonic
Austria,
regions. Maybe a bit of the Franks.
region.
I think he's probably a Frank in terms of heritage. Probably some of like Poland, Russia. Probably not too much in the Scandic region, because at this time, even then,
they weren't part of it.
They were their own thing.
And even to this day, they've stayed somewhat out of the European power structure.
Like Norway. Yeah.
Hey,
jinx!
Oh, we can't speak, or I can't speak. I mean,
and Norway did Brexit before Brexit.
And that's what we've been talking about. Like, do we have a Norwegian-style relationship with the EU? But that's neither here or there. So, Holy Roman Emperor, what Frederick the Nth, right? Allied with Germany, other Franks, that kind of thing. Now, classic storytelling technique to figure out where we're going is to say, how does this end? What's the end of this? What happens to Lorenzo and the Bordellos in Europe?
I want to say that plans like this have lots of holes in them.
Yes.
And people have somebody. If Lorenzo is leading this charge, there's going to be people behind him who are going to want to have his power because so he's leading a charge. Let's say he's got a lot of power. They're basically ruling southern Europe at the moment, and they're trying to push into Germany, maybe north of France.
Europe,
and they've got some allies with the English, but only from English. Lower leveled English, not the English monarchy, as you said.
The barons, the people who are looking to snide their way into their own
they're
power.
on the edge of ruling Europe.
Yes.
They're on the cusp.
They're right on that edge,
So perhaps they're on the battlefield with Frederick. So we've got a battlefield. Of course, Lorenzo has to be on this battlefield for show, right? So perhaps he's on a chariot. He's very, and he's perhaps got one of his boys with him. Maybe he's got a soldier with him so maybe one of his generals he's shagging or something. And he's very debauched. So he's probably a bad general. I'm imagining.
Yeah.
He's a great dreamer, right?
And maybe a great politician.
Yeah.
But not a military leader.
But there are other military leaders. But he wants to lead this charge to defeat the Holy Roman Emperor. Because then he can unite the religious side, which will perhaps make the rest of Europe collapse around him. Because if they own the Holy Roman Emperor and they own the papacy, then that's most of Europe owned, right?
Yeah.
In terms of...
de facto, essentially, regardless of how much physical power you have, de facto you kind of control it.
So perhaps he just... The idea that this general, this Frederick... this Frederick the Nth.
Yes, the mathematically determined Pope. Yeah,
not Pope, Holy Roman Emperor.
Oh shoot! Sorry.
His brother's the Pope, Alfonso.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's probably they always change their name when they're the Pope, don't they? So he's probably Pope Peter the Ninth or something.
Or Gregory the 56th.
Doesn't matter what it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's renamed himself.
He's still Alfonso. Yeah.
But so I think this is the problem they have: is their military is mercenary, right? So not loyal. Right, and if they can't afford to pay them, so maybe there's a big payment issue right in the middle of the war, and the soldiers just stop fighting. Yeah. And so this dream of the United Europe
kind of collapses
on this battlefield, and they just get butchered by Frederick and his actually good, loyal army.
Love that. That's a great end for it. And in a kind
it's
of
like a dream of the United Europe that failed.
But it's also, in terms of historical fiction, alternate history, it allows us to kind of insert this idea of an almost pre-European union, but also explain why it didn't actually work and why we exist today in the state we do have. Yeah. But that does bring us back nicely. I've dropped it to the one to the €1 coin you've brought in today.
Yeah.
And when you put it like that, when you think of all the diverse interests, power structures, and conflicts that went into ancient Europe and historical Europe, the fact that we did end up with a modern unified Europe, I'm sorry we're leaving it now, but for a time, a unified Europe, that's amazing.
Yeah, and even beyond that, even if we do leave, and it is what it is.
When we leave, yeah.
I think when we leave is the better way to put it.
Because it is a when now, not an if. There was a time when it could have been if, and now it's when.
And I'm happy to be very positive about Brexit, because why the fuck not? But it's because it's happening now. I think the very simple idea of being able to expand and the fact that we're not at war anymore. We're not.
Yeah.
We're not.
Generally,
we are. We might be. We might disagree. We might argue. I think the languages are different, but unlike the time of the Bordellos,
the
Bordellos, we're not butchering each other for power anymore. We are arguing pretty badly, and disagreeing over a number of things. And within countries, we're destroying each other. And many of those same emotions of slitting throats and backstabbing. We all know politicians, right? If you guys have any idea what Brexit is like in the UK with our political parties, they are fracturing at the seams,
but still just
holding together.
I think you're absolutely right. It's an argument but it's not a throat-slitting conflict.
Yeah.
And I'm impressed that we have managed to stick
Exactly.
that way for so long.
So even if Brexit, as Brexit occurs, I think lots of people can be very doomy about it.
Yep.
And, full disclosure, we both voted Remain, I believe.
We're both Remainers.
Yeah, but I'm very positive about it's happened. Let's take it. Why does it have to be a bad thing?
Let's put it this way. We've spent more time as a society, a culture, an empire, a nation without Europe than we have in Europe. As much as I love Europe, as much as I love being part of this idea of, like Lorenzo Bordello had, of a unified Europe, both culturally, economically, politically, militaristically, I do think that we will be fine on our own.
Yeah.
I'd just rather we were fine with our friends.
Yeah.
I can think about this as an individual. I love time by myself. You're the same, I know this. We both are very happy by ourselves. We know how to spend time by ourselves, spend time thinking, feeling, doing whatever we want. But time spent with loved ones, good friends, people we're close to, is generally more preferable to time spent alone. And that's how I think of the EU. Yes, we can do it, and yes, we're absolutely fine by ourselves, but I love being with those other people.
Yeah, and I think to put a positive note on the other spin, which is a theory I've been sort of leaning towards more over the past few years, is just the idea that big structures of too many people are harder to run. Yeah. And I think that's the ultimate problem, and very understandably why most people in the UK voted to leave the EU is because it's a giant bureaucracy of confusion. And and Bordello's great European empire probably would have been a bureaucracy as well.
It would have done, in order to maintain it.
And I think the idea, if there's anything we can keep going forward, it's that idea of let's be together, but let's not kill each other. Yeah,
which would be the
let's
perfect
be friends.
Europe to me. Yes, let's stick together, but let's not get too deep into shit.
And perhaps again, a great tale from Bordello's time, which was before Venice was a city-state.
Yeah.
Florence was a city-state.
Yeah.
That there was some power in the idea of very small power structures making their own way. And I think let's just take that message and say let's be friends with other people and do it as best we can.
Yes, maybe individual states connected to other people with like-minded goals and values.
Yeah, and this idea of like Western culture, let's celebrate it. Let's not be shy of it.
Pratchett does this very well with the city-state of Ankh-Morpork, which is generally where most of his stories are set, right? It is a perfect encapsulation of Western powers, which says we're quite small, like the UK, but we're very, very powerful, and you're either with us or you're against us, which I remember is something that George Bush Jr. said during the whole Iraq conflict.
Of course.
His allies, potential enemies, you're either with us or you're against us. And whilst it's quite a crass oversimplification of a relationship, it does also stand true, and that's why I love Europe. We're better, you might as well be with everyone than against everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of putting it. So I want us to name the story of the Bordellos. What would you call this event in history?
So I wrote down a couple of things while I was thinking about this.
Good.
And I also, before we finish, I want to do a trailer for this as a story. Right?
Okay.
But one title I thought of was The Edge of Europe. Because you talked about just being on that edge. Are we going to tip over the one way? Are we going to tip over the other way? So the edge of Europe.
Cusp, yeah.
Yes. I can't think of any other major titles other than that really at the moment. The Edge of Europe, the proclamation of unification.
Or you could also go the Bordellian Empire. The Bordellian Europe, or you could even say the Bordello, the conspiracy of the Bordellos, that kind
How about Europe, an argument? An ongoing argument.
I'll take that.
Okay, we're going to shake hands over that. I'm going to write that down.
Okay, so your trailer for Europe to sign us off.
An argument, because an argument implies that things aren't going well, but you are at least talking about it.
You're engaging, yes.
You're engaging,
You're not killing each other.
So, Renaissance Europe, Venice, the centre of trade, power, money and politics, one family,
A young firebrand.
The Bordellos. A grand matriarch who has designs for what the family will become.
They have a dream of changing Europe forever.
Lorenzo Bordello, a young man positioned at the cusp of power in Europe.
There will be family. There will be blood. There will be inappropriate relations.
His brother Alfonso, the new pope, divided against the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick the Nth.
Can they unite Europe by facing up to the great European general, the Holy Roman Emperor?
Will the Europeans ever have a unified single currency under the Bordellos with their faces on the coins, etc.?
Probably not, but let's find out in the movie.
Europe, an argument.
The movie.
Coming soon, coming forever. That's apparently what Europe is. We always do this. We've been doing it for eons.
Never stopping, continuing.
Please buy a ticket for Europe, an argument.
And don't kill each other in the movie theater.
Okay, I like it.
All right, guys, thank you so much today. I really appreciated hanging out with you guys. I hope you enjoyed our biopic of the
Europe,
of the Bordello family and a possible European Union before the European Union.
If you are living in Europe, tell us what you feel about it, about Brexit, about the current fractured state of Europe. If you live outside of Europe, how does it feel to you? Especially maybe our American brothers and sisters. How does Europe seem to you? What is it like at the moment? What do you think will happen in the future?
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming along. Subscribe. Be there on YouTube. Yow chow.
And all the Twitter spheres and what have you.
Yeah, iTunes, whatever. Make sure you subscribe and hang out with us more.
You'll find us on thespeculationstation.com.
Yeah. All right,
.uk. .org.
.org @_ spec station. Hashtag.
We're cool guys.
Hashtag the Bordello family.
I'm not going to forget that for a while, for sure. We'll see you next time for another fresh episode with a new object and new speculations upon it. That's
all
what
right,
we
guys. Take care. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Speculation Station.